Two items for the, there we go, two items for tonight's meeting. First, a little bit of an update on the general plan. As you know, the general plan was put out for public comment on the 31st. That will conclude on April 2nd. We'll be pretty active during that time. We're making a presentation to MAG, the Maricopa Association of Governments, on March 26th. We'll be presenting the same draft that's online for public comment to 5 boards and commissions in February and March. Meeting with the General Plan Advisory Committee in February and March. We'll be coming back on March 7th to Planning and Zoning Commission for a work session environment to receive your comments on the draft, and then follow up with our first of 2 public meetings on April 7th to review your comments that have been then incorporated into the, and all of the public comments that will be incorporated into the draft. Secondly, my understanding is there was an issue with receiving the packets and the postage, and you have my sincere apologies. We will take a look at that on Monday and see if we cannot come up with a better system to ensure that you're getting your packets in a timely manner.
We appreciate that. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to have a call to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on any items that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I close that. And at this time, I'm going to have a motion for the January 10th minutes, please.
I move to approve the January minutes.
Second.
That is a 6 yes vote, 1 abstained, and that is Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next item then, Sherry.
The next item is discussion regarding development issues and noise contours.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. As you may remember, late last year, the Commission requested information about the Luke flag over contours. And we have the distinct honor to have Mr. Rusty Mitchell here tonight to speak on this.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, thank you. On behalf of General Rothstein and nearly 6,000 men and women of Luke Air Force Base, we'd like to extend our deepest appreciation for the support from the City of Surprise, from Mayor Walcott all the way through to the staffs. Thank you very much for the support that you are so generous with. I'd like to go through a couple slides here real quick and stop me for questions en route or at the end. I think there's about 8 slides, so there's not a lot. But you can ask me while we're going, and that'll be obviously fine as well. These are the slides here at AUX 1. Those are the noise lines that are in state statute presently. And all of the state statutes on the transportation section, all relative to those lines there. The outside line is what you may have heard referred to as the 65 decibel line. That's beyond that. There's really not too many restrictions. And inside of that, then it becomes increasingly more restrictive as it goes in. It's very important to realize, and my lawyers make me remind everybody of this, that there is no enforcement, nor approval, nor denial for any development anywhere in the state of Arizona by the federal government and Luke Air Force Base. You hold that right completely to yourself, and it's with the state that put those restrictions on. So we get landowners a lot that come in and say, we hear that you have to approve this. It's somewhat of it's not really a semantic issue, that's just incorrect. We don't approve or deny, we just say whether or not something would impact our flying operations. And almost all of our comments are all based on the 65 decibel line. That's the aux field, which the green is the City of Surprise, as you know. Here's the main airfield and the 65 decibel line, and the green again with the City of Surprise. And you can see how that falls in. Again, 65, then a little more restrictive on the 70, and then on beyond that is not really in Surprise. Here's the difference between the main base and AUX 1 that's very important. The main base, those lines are based on the noise contours that were done when we had both F-16s, which we have at the base now, and F-15s, which we used to have in the early 90s, late 80s. The combination of those two aircraft generated those noise lines. So those are in fact real noise lines that were at one point over the city. The difference between the main base noise lines and AUX1 is very important in that the noise lines at AUX1 are only generated by F-16s, not the combination of those two airplanes. So they are somewhat smaller than what we see at the main base. And why that's a factor, I'll show you in a slide here in just a second. Matter of fact, here it is. The yellow line is the full environmental impact study of 144 F-35s at Luke Air Force Base and 26 F-16s, so 170 aircraft. And you can see that yellow line falls generally within the state statute lines. There are some excursions to the east of the field and down in the southeast corner you see down there, but not too egregious. Most of them are inside the state statute line, and that's really important. I might as well say it here because one of the more common questions is, when the F-35 is here, how will the lines expand or change? That is what we expect the lines on the current study that we have now. We're still evaluating some other options on that. But there is no discussion from the base, nor has there been any discussion from any of the West Valley cities or at the state level for a change to the noise contours. You know, these were put in place 20 years ago, and the agreement at that time was, yes, they were larger because it was a combination of 16 and 15, but it stopped the breathing of those lines. Every 2 or 3 years we'd do a study. The cities couldn't live to that. Developers couldn't live to that. You know, landowners, you know, 1 year something was okay, the next year it was not okay, and that was just driving everybody crazy. So the agreement was to go to that 15-16 combination in the state statutes, throw it down, everybody lives to it. And that still holds today. That is the concept today. With the F-35 being inside there, it shouldn't really, we're not going to be advocating for a change to those lines. So that's very important. Now, out at the main out at the Ox Field, which again is an area that you're concerned about, these here are the current F-16 lines. Now, remember, these are based just on the F-16 and not the combination of the 16 and the 15. Here is what the F-35 contours look like. Now, I can't give you an answer of why it looks so different shape-wise, because we do the same operations out there that we do with the F-16 now. But you will see that it is wider and does go outside the state statute lines, particularly to the southwest of the airfield, where it goes outside there. That's the ramifications of us only having 16 noise lines out there versus the 16-15 combination. So the extra lines was not really a surprise. So that's what we're faced with out at the Ox. Same thing applies. We're not going to be advocating for an expansion of those lines. It's something that the Planning and Zoning Commission and the cities should take into account, because that is going to be real noise out to those lines. So whether or not you kind of lead turn it and let the people understand where that line falls and where their property then falls and what they should be able to do on that property, you can do that up front or do it at the end when they could possibly complain about noise, and that's, which is what we'd like to avoid. And it's also a safety factor. The accident potential zones, and that's how the county has addressed it. It's not only an environmental noise issue, but it's also an environmental safety hazard where we fly in our airplanes. There are some houses out there on final approach to the Ox Field that when I was flying there, pretty much amazed me that there were things that would stay on the walls, because it's right underneath us as we're at the lowest point of 200 to 300 feet above the ground. And we don't get any complaints from that, though. It's amazing. You know, they really don't. But what we would not want to see, and that would impact our flight, would impact the flight operations, is further expansion like we saw at Patton Place Estates 7-8 years ago. That started to expand, and then we started getting a major subdivision on our final approach where we were flying over those houses as low as 700 feet. So now not only is it a noise issue, but it's also a safety issue of you know, having houses in that particular location. I cannot tell you how for years, for the 10 years that I've been doing this job, how my staff has been invited out to look at the general plan, sit at the table with you, explain to the staff members of what our flight operations and how they impact, and we've been involved from the very start on all of your general plans, and I tell you, it saves issues down the road, and it's very productive, and it helps us continue to do our flight mission. I think there's a couple slides in here with the state statute, and all I wanted to submit these in there to the slides for is this is what we go. There's two things we go by. We go by this and state statute. That's Arizona law, and so if it says, and there's a paragraph after the chart that says if it's not on the chart, it's deemed incompatible. That's a pretty open-ended thing because the chart's not all inclusive. That's why we get a lot of landowners to come talk to us, and we do talk to them, and we try to find. My staff has the guidance from myself and General Rothstein to try to find a way to make things work. You know, we don't want to come before the city council members of Surprise or any city and say no, 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 no. The whole reason that this has been successful for 10 years is that my staff and the city staffs have sat down and found a way to make it work for both of us. You know, in the past, Surprise included, before we were having that interaction, cities would approve a development or something that would negatively impact us, and it would cause a safety issue. Not because they didn't want to protect Luke, not because they didn't want us there, but because they didn't understand what our requirements are. And that's our responsibility to you for nights like tonight, for me to come out and answer questions of what our requirements are so that you can make an educated decision whether or not to approve or disapprove something. And my staff is there 24/7 to answer those phone calls to how we can better coexist, make it economically successful for City of Surprise, and make it possible for Luke to continue its mission for decades to come. Okay. There's one final thing that we look at, and that is called a graduated density. And the graduated density, if we were to have the average density for Maricopa County is 6 dwellings per acre. If we had 6 dwellings per acre right up to the 65 decibel line, that's what it would look like. And all we've done is taken the profile of the noise and moved it down around Maryville, somewhere down closer to Phoenix, to show the density there. If that was to happen, as much as that open space is there, the general would eventually decide, or with single engine aircraft would probably come to the point that it may not be the safest thing to operate airplanes, single engine aircraft with a density like that. So what we have devised, and that's what it looks like out the window of an airplane, but all that open land. What we've devised is that graduating the density away from the 65 line as much as possible. No legislative enforcement at all. That's a really important point for you and for us to remember. But for the first half acre outside the 65 decibel line, we advocate for no more than 2 dwellings per acre. Just kind of, that's a subdivision. And then for the next half mile, no more than 4 dwellings per acre. And then for the next 2 miles, you can go into that 6 dwellings per acre. And that just kind of gives us some open space away from that 65. If that is followed, and I must say that every city and the county surrounding the main base and out at the Ox Field has gone along with that graduated density. And again, I emphasize, I am aware there's no legislative enforcement on that. So it's purely a voluntary and a planning issue if you can do it. To the east of the field, we don't fly to the east of the field anymore. We used to, but that was one of the mitigation items. We don't fly on this side of it, so the graduated density to the east of the field is not quite so critical as it is to the west. So that's the graduated density concept. If you hear of that, that's in fact what that is. And now, yes, I'm here for questions and anything you might have.
Thank you. Commissioner Howland.
Yeah, could you show the picture of the Ox Field? Because I just have a question on that.
Okay, this is going to take me some time to go that way. See if I can go back this way.
That one.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, you showed the graduated density on Luke. Do we do that here too?
We do.
And the other thing is, there's this tail that's probably impacted us more than anything. Is that still?
On the lower right-hand portion of the
No,
picture?
the upper,
Yes, that's still there. As a matter of fact,
because you didn't show any contours.
it kind of falls. The tail goes on out, and then the F-35 are inside the state statute tail, so it's pretty much captured already. It starts to expand. It's very difficult to see, and I apologize, but just before it starts to widen out, you can the current 16 noise lines stay fairly tight. As a matter of fact, it's almost the inner line there, and then those outside lines are the 35 lines.
Okay.
But we do, and that it's the reason that is critical to our flight operations. When back in 2005, and we've closed 2 squadrons since then, so the operations are down a little bit. But we did 13,000 operations out there a year. Now, one approach is an operation, and that same airplane leaving is an operation, so that's 2. So 6,000 flights or so out there. But what that does is it removes those aircraft from the West Valley over a more populated area out to an area that is more sparsely populated. It's still important that we take care of the people that live out there, but there's not as many houses out there, so we move as many operations as we can out there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Smith?
No questions.
Commissioner Gunn?
My questions were already answered.
Thank you. Commissioner Summers?
I have a question on house. One of the documents we got showed the noise contour, and I'm wondering if the blue line on your drawing there, the F-35 line, would be shown on documents to the residents buying into a project.
Right now, the only requirement is to show the lines that are in state statute.
Okay, the 65 then.
Yes, sir. And they're F-16 65 lines.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the big hook on, that goes to the north, a little bit down to the southeast, and then fairly.
You're saying the very outside line there is the 16 or the 35?
The blue. The blue is an F-16 line.
Oh, okay.
The wider lines down that thicken up out there, those are F-35 lines on the outside, and that will be something that I don't think that they're going to go in. I can't imagine them going into the state statute to change. That would be because it's split between Maricopa County and the city of Surprise. If you guys wanted to do that in your zoning requirements, we would provide you all the information to be able to make sure you advise people that are buying property where those are. But I don't think it's going to go into state statute.
Okay, and I think that the information packet that we got was based on state statute.
But I'm sure, yes, sir. I'm sure it was.
Okay, and the operations for when you convert to the F-35 for this field, about the same number of flights?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, that's what I've said on TV and other interviews, is that the F-16s you see flying around now, you can just replace that F-16 with an F-35 because it's going to be the exact same mission.
Okay.
Really no difference to our flight operations of what we're going to be doing.
Thank you. That's all the questions
Yes,
I
sir.
have.
Commissioner Hoyler?
No questions.
Commissioner Chapman?
Yes, just out of curiosity, what is it that you, in looking at the city of Surprise, whether it be the zoning or the city council, what can we do for you to help your mission? Because I see there's things we're already talking about, noise, safety. What is it that we might be able to do to make for sure that we meet your goal?
Back to Vice Chairman Summers and his packet that he bought, that he had when he bought his property. The upfront education of what we do means night and day difference. I'll use Verrado as an example. Verrado, down in the southeast side of the White Tank Mountains. You go into a sales office there and they have a picture of an F-16 that is a huge size, 30-inch by 40-inch, whatever, and it said, "Proud Neighbors, Luke Air Force Base." It's loud at Verrado. In the 8-9 years that they've been open, and we haven't had one noise complaint from them because of the education process. So I would ask the same thing. In the planning and zoning areas that you control, and as part of the developments and the landowners that come to you for developments in your particular area, it would be awful nice if you were to stipulate in their approval some kind of education and announcement of being neighbors of Luke Air Force Base. That way, it's no surprises, and people can make a choice that way. It really makes a difference. I've been out to other subdivisions as opposed to Verado on one side. I've been to other ones where I've gone out there and admittedly I didn't identify myself and said, "Hey, are there any airplanes out here?" And they go, "No," a couple times, and they'll show me a 8.5-inch by 11-inch piece of paper thumbtacked to the wall that is not indicative of where we fly. And guess what? We get lots of complaints from those areas. It makes a difference. It really does. And you guys are the front line for that. And anything that my staff can do to help you, we're there. That's all we do. Our job is to do exactly what we're talking about right now. Thank you for the question. That's really important. Thank you, sir.
Keep that in mind. Okay. Anyone else? Tina, thank you so much for your time. And
Madam Chair, thank you very much. And let me just emphasize one last time the difference that the support of the city of Surprise, the mayor, the city council, and the staffs showed to the Air Force back in Washington, D.C. is really a large part of why Luke Air Force Base was selected for the F-35 mission, which will ensure the continued mission of Luke Air Force Base for decades to come. And it was because of your participation in these kind of meetings that we were there. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next.
Thank you. Consideration and action on case FS 11-243, a site plan for Hope Community Church.
Good evening once again, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Tonight I bring before you Hope Community Church. The site is located on Reams Road, approximately a half-mile south of Bell, and it's in a little pocket of rural residential in that neighborhood. This is the site plan for the church facility, and the first phase is an 8,750 square foot facility with associated patio covers in light blue. And also there is a 1,400, phase 2 of 1,400 office expansion that they plan in the future. And tonight you'll be seeing that on the plan as well as the elevations so that they wouldn't have to come back to the commission for that expansion. Also, a lot of these drawings do have a lot of lines. They get a little confusing. I kind of pulled out all the lines of the pavement to better show the circulation of the facility. The entrance is off of Reams Road, and exit, it's full turning access on Reams Road. And pedestrian access will be provided along there, a 6-foot sidewalk consistent with our engineering development standards. And parking. And you may remember last year we had another facility that there were concerns about parking. And this, based on our code, this requires approximately 70 vehicle parking spaces. This facility is providing 106, and you can see the darker red representation of vehicles. All those are the over our code requirements of parking. So that on an event such as an Easter service or a Christmas service, that would be fully able to accommodate, because I do not see people parking along the road on Reams. Also, I'd like to add that there is dedicating a portion of Reams Road that will be going to council next week, and that's for the full size of Reams Road, the sidewalks, the landscaping, street lights. Elevation, this is a southwest architecture, and it sort of has like a ranch style that is very consistent with the rural residential neighborhood. Over there, the south being the front entrance, and the east and west entrance. Landscaping is plentiful on this, and they are using low water use plants. Also, the trees in the parking lot will contribute to cooling down, as we spoke before about the heat island effect that causes. And that concludes my presentation, barring any questions you may have for myself or the applicant.
Commissioner Smith.
I have no questions at this time.
Commissioner Bennett.
I do have a question, and I couldn't see it on the site plan. But the trellises that are on the west elevation, will those be supporting plants, or are those simply decorative?
Those are decorative.
Okay, thank you. No questions.
Commissioner Summers.
I had a comment, and that is a concern for exiting the church with the church and the school across Reams Road, and wondering just coordination of exiting to make sure that we don't end with a traffic jam with everybody trying to get out of both churches at the same time. And so a suggestion to coordinate that somehow.
Okay. I'll pass that on to the applicant.
That's all.
Commissioner Hoyle.
No questions.
And Commissioner Chapman?
I had a similar question about, on Reams Road, if they're coming south, isn't that a double, there's a turning lane there, isn't there?
Yes, sir, there is.
Yeah, because I was concerned about traffic backing up and turning and waiting, but I think if they could coordinate these efforts, I think it'd be fine. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioners? This does not require a public
I
hearing.
have, do I get a shot?
Go ahead.
I have some concerns. And that's why I look at this lot, and it's all parking lot and church, one building. And it's all crammed into this little thing, and we're using, which I'm always concerned about, this 4 people per car concept.
Yes, sir.
Every car that comes to this church is going to have 4 people in it. I don't see that working at the other churches. And what concerns me here is if you end up with excess cars, where are they going to park in this facility? There is no street parking available anywhere. I think this is totally an unworkable site for a church.
Well, the 4 cars per, or the 4.
That's our
passengers.
minimum.
Yes.
That's not.
That's our minimum, yes, sir.
We have a range in the code.
Yes, sir.
And I'm saying we're using the minimum here, and we have no place to park if that lot's full.
We are not using the minimum on here. This is,
Well, there's some over, but it's still,
it's about 50% over the.
I mean, there's just no place to park. You can't park on Reams.
Well, this, as per code, it does meet it and go beyond 50%. I understand your concerns.
I mean, I just look at this thing, this lot, it's just parking lot with a building on it.
I'm sorry,
I mean, I have real problem personally approving this because I just don't think it's a good site.
Thank you.
I mean, where is the overflow parking going to be?
That I could not answer at where the overflow parking is. It's just that this site did provide 50% more than was required.
Do you know how many members there are at this church now?
I believe there is a total of 300 members.
Okay.
Is the capacity of the church 300?
Oh,
What's the capacity of the building itself?
let me bring up the applicant to answer that question.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I'm James Klein, architect. At the present time, the church has a membership of 125. We planned a building of about 250 maximum, but again, we have exceeded the parking requirement, and we know the numbers. I've been designing churches for 40 years, and it's very careful. This is one of our great concerns as well. We believe that we've handled it pretty well here on the site. Granted, it's a small site, but we've managed, and we believe that we've taken great care in providing the appropriate parking for the number of people we expect there.
So,
Commissioner Hoyler.
What is the capacity occupancy for the building itself?
About 250 seats in the area, yeah.
and you have, what, 104 parking spots, was it?
106.
So that'd be
2.5.
2.5 per car.
And that's precisely the range I'm usually designing in exactly. That exceeds anything that any of the municipalities I work with have requested or used in their ordinances.
Yeah. And it's unusual, I would imagine, that the church, if had a problem, would find some way to get their parishioners to work together to get to church and back, I guess.
When the church has a problem like this, and I am a churchgoer, and the churches I've been involved with, many times we'll find a property that's nearby to shuttle, and it's appropriate for parking. We're always very careful about that. We don't want to violate any zoning ordinances, but the churches are very creative in the ability to find parking, even perhaps at a school or another unused property. I'm not saying that that's something we have to do here, but we are creative to be careful about off-street, off-site parking.
But the church isn't also going to have one service, I would imagine. They're going to have a couple
Well,
different services on a Sunday or one on a Saturday.
We could expect Sunday mornings there might be 2 services, and that's what most churches do, and then perhaps a Wednesday evening, and that's usually much reduced as far as attendance. So we really don't expect that the site's going to be that greatly impacted by cars to require the off-site parking anywhere. Thank you.
May I offer a solution?
This is Pastor Brian Shaw.
I just,
Please state your name for the record.
my name is Brian Shaw. I'm the pastor of Hope Community Church currently. And if I may offer another alleviating concern, one of the members of our church, who also was the donor of the property there, owns the property directly behind it, about 1.25 acres, and he's a member of the congregation. So that could be a viable, possible solution for extra parking if needed. But as we've stated before, there seems to be plenty of parking at two persons per vehicle for all the parking that's there in the current state. And we do have hopes to purchase the adjoining land and add that to our property.
How many members are there in your church?
About 125.
About 125. Commissioners, any other questions? This does not require a public hearing, so I'd like to ask for a motion, please.
I move to approve FS 11-243, a site plan for Hope Community Church, and to adopt staff's findings.
Second.
Please vote at this time.
There's one missing
Yeah,
vote.
mine is not lighting up
Yeah.
at all. Push it till it's done. So on a voice vote,
Okay, let me go ahead and display the votes then.
I approve.
We have 5 yes vote and 1 no vote for John Halen.
And Vice Chair Summers votes for it also, yes.
Thank you very much. 6 yes vote, 1 no vote.
Thank you. Next.
Public Service Agency presentations for the Community Development Block Grant Program year 2013-2014 Public Services Grant Applications, and this is a public hearing.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Christina Ramirez, and I work for the Community and Economic Development Department. We're excited because this is going to begin the process that we take on a yearly basis to go through the grant funding public outreach application process for public services, and then eventually recommendations for use of the Community Development Block Grant Fund that eventually will go to Council for approval. So with that, today's objective is to give you a little bit of background on CDBG and the public services money that is awarded through this grant application process. We will give applicants the opportunity to also give their presentation and answer any questions that you might have for their grant fund application, and also to field any public comments that we receive as part of the process. Just as a background, I know that this is something new, so please feel free to ask any questions. We are what is referred to as a direct entitlement city for community development block grants. What that means is that through a formula, we receive a yearly allotment for community development block grant, where we have to put together a plan that shows what we intend on using that funding for. The advantage of being an entitlement community is the fact that we can set aside up to 15% of the grant to award to subrecipients, nonprofit partners, and the like to use for public services. This allows the city the opportunity to expand our arm, if you will, and provide those services that the city needs through community partners that could leverage this money.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Can we interrupt and ask questions as you get to them, because I don't want to forget any questions.
I am fine with that if the chair is fine with that.
Okay, so the 15% is the 67,150 is what you're saying?
Correct. Approximately is what we think that we will receive. At this point, it is a draft number, so we will have to finalize that once we receive the entitlement amount for the year.
But once the funding amount is decided, it's going to be more than that. Is that correct?
The funding amount that we get is approximately $450,000. So the amount that we can use for public services will, right now that we're using for this process, would be $67,150. It can go up, but for now, to be conservative, that's the amount that we're considering awarding.
Okay, so after we award this $67,150, there's an opportunity for applicants to come back and pursue more funding?
Generally, we would probably just adjust the amounts of those that you would like to fund, because the amount that it would change is generally a couple $100.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right now?
Yeah, I had a question on that also. The greater portion of that is used in what is the bulk of the money used for? Not the 15%, but the 85%, just out of curiosity.
We do use 20% for administrative services, which is for the implementation of the grant, so it would be the staff and any other consultant costs. But besides that, that is what we're also going to be discussing at the March 7th meeting, where the commission can decide if it's important to continue our housing rehabilitation program, or if staff has recommended any capital project. In the past, those have included flood drain improvement projects, park expansions. We at one time purchased a fire truck. There are a few different recommendations. That is a smaller pool that you're going to be giving a recommendation from, because we have what's also called a consolidated plan, which is the 5-year plan that we say basically what we're going to do every year, and you choose from that 5-year plan versus the whole myriad of possible projects. So it does give it a little bit more narrow base.
Okay, thank you.
So as described, one more?
I do have a question. Is it possible that when we do award this, we award it based on percentage and not on the dollar amount? If it does come in, let's say it comes in and instead of $67,000, it's $87,000 or $107,000. I mean, at that point, you're talking about a $40,000 swing, which who gets what?
Right. That would be a possibility. That would be a possibility, absolutely. So as described earlier, the amount that we would be using for consideration tonight as you listen to applicants would be $67,150. As also briefly mentioned, just to put a little bit more perspective on it, every 5 years the city puts together what's called a consolidated plan. We have a comprehensive plan that we do a lot of public outreach, questionnaires, and public hearings where the community decides what services and amenities are necessary in the community. From there, on a yearly basis, we submit to HUD a plan for that year and what we're going to do with that year that includes the administration and the public services. Within the annual action plan, the public services amount is what you would consider in and of itself through this application process that we're starting tonight. Just for timeline purposes, the application was made available in December and was due in early January. Today we are going to be holding the public hearing, and then March 7th we're going to be coming again to the commission asking for actual funding recommendations. In April, we are going to go through a process of going to a workshop with City Council and then seeking the final recommendations from City Council for the funding that's going to go into a plan that is then presented to HUD by May 15th. Just as a reminder, community development block grants were awarded with the intent of either helping or benefiting low to moderate income persons. What that means are individuals and families that are at 80% or below of median income for the county. So for a family of four, it's generally about the mid-40s that they can make in gross income. So it's not extremely low, but they are considered low income. It can also meet an area benefit. What that means is that 51% or more of people within a certain census tract have to be at or below 80% of median income. That is decided by census tract, and we are informed by HUD what census tract meets that criteria. At this time, the only census tract that meets that criteria is the original town site. So by majority, the people that are being benefited is within that town site, and that's how they are approved as an area. The third is a limited clientele. These are special groups that HUD has determined to have a significant need. For example, elderly would be one, disabled adults is another one, homeless individuals would be another one, people with AIDS. Those are the individual limited clientele. So as you listen to these applications, you have to keep in mind that whatever program they present has to meet one of these objectives. So as you're talking to the individual, listening to their presentations, keep in mind that it has to meet one of these three, or if not, it does not qualify.
May I interject here? So why doesn't the city staff screen those applicants out for us before they get to us?
We have.
So we won't hear anybody that doesn't meet those?
Exactly.
Okay.
But again, you know, it's just seeing the benefit that they're bringing to the community, and the impact that they're bringing to the community is also the main point. So again, having to do with area benefit and limited clientele, some of the criteria for those beneficiaries. Also, as note, as part of the consolidated plan, some of the funding priorities that were pointed out were the need for childcare, healthcare, job training, recreation programs, education programs, public safety services, fair housing activities, services for senior citizens, services for homeless persons, drug abuse counseling treatment, and welfare. Welfare is generally assistance like for utilities or assistance, emergency type assistance. It cannot be given in the form of cash to an individual, but it can be paid on their behalf through a nonprofit or something of that nature. So these are the top priorities. Again, as you go through, you just keep in mind whether or not this would be filling one of the priorities within the city. So these are the 5 applicants that we received and that we'll be presenting tonight. Benavia, the first applicant, has adult day services, home delivered meals, child development center, family resource center. They have requested $25,000, and staff has determined that they would be eligible by meeting the needs of low to moderate income clientele. So they would then screen each person that they're giving our funding to assure that they qualify. CAS, Central Arizona Shelter Services, is a regional emergency shelter. They requested $8,000, and they would meet the criteria by assisting limited clientele. St. Mary's Food Bank gives emergency food boxes. They have requested $25,000. Again, they would be meeting the low to moderate clientele because everybody that would be receiving food boxes funded by the city would be considered low income and a resident of the city. The City of Surprise has requested $47,144 to continue the Summer Youth Employment Program. This program would meet the low to moderate income clientele because each individual youth that would participate in the program would be screened for eligibility having to do with residency and income. Arizona Charter Academy is seeking funding for their ball program. They are requesting $16,479. They are considered to be an area benefit. They are located within the original town site and have a majority of students within that school that meet a free or reduced lunch criteria, which then translate to the families being low income. So under this criteria, all of the applicants that you're going to be listening to are eligible. So we did an initial applicant evaluation having to do with each of these applicants, and some of the things that staff noticed as we went through the applications that we can let the commission know, so you can ask questions and give each of the speakers the opportunity to address are. The Summer Youth Employment Program is a program that is run by the city and was successfully run 1 year and has not been able to secure additional funding. St. Mary's Food Bank also has successfully been able to expend their money in record time because of the number of individuals that have come to their organization, therefore also scoring high. Arizona Charter Academy does have a recreation youth literacy program. There are some recreation services within the city already, and it's limited, should I say, the impact of what they are doing at this time, of the number of students and the leveraging that they bring. That's what affected their scoring. Benavia currently started on their second year of funding. Benavia has had to do some tweaking to their program because they have asked for funding for home-delivered meals and for family resource centers. Home-delivered meals doesn't seem to have a great amount of people seeking their services. The resource program is something that's difficult for us because to give like an information line and such is difficult for us because there's no way to really track who we're benefiting if people are just calling in or using a library or something like that. So the beneficiaries are difficult to track. The CAS Emergency Shelter Program, what affected the scoring for them the most was the fact that MAG does an annual night out, is what it's called, where they do a count of the number of homeless persons that they see living within the community, and those numbers generally tend to be low. Also, because a lot of people, unfortunately, that are homeless sometimes refer to the city that they last lived in, but don't always have identification proving that that's where they're from. And so for us, it's difficult to see if we are in fact helping Surprise residents for that reason. So that was a part of the reason for the scoring. So after the presentation for today, we are going to give you the opportunity to ask questions of each of the presenters. And then also I wanted to point out that if you have any other questions after tonight that you think of, or you do some research and you find that you do have an additional question, please feel free to email staff, and we will ask each of the presenters or applicants to answer that question, and we will send it out to everybody on the commission. So don't think that this is the only time that you will be able to have those questions answered, because we understand that it's a lot of information, and so please feel free to do that. So with that, I think we're going to be ready to start the presentations. The city clerk is going to be timing, because we want to give everybody the same opportunity. She's going to be putting 4 minutes on the timer with the possibility of an additional minute if absolutely necessary, and so that way we can definitely keep this moving forward. Any questions, concerns?
Could I ask one question? The scoring that you provided us, was that scoring done by staff, or did you invite somebody from the community to score?
No, all of that scoring was done by staff. And as part of your packet, you received the scoring rubric that talked about the program design and community impact, experience and capacity, leveraging, and references. And this is what we use to score each of these applications. And so we did have 3 staff members sit and review each of the applications, and we're the ones that came up with this just simply by our experience, this being our 4th year, and what questions usually came up.
May I ask what this color-coded scoring sheet was?
Is it the same scoring sheet? It's the same scoring sheet. It should be the same scoring sheet.
But it has different number totals, so I guess that's what I was confused with.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I would have to look to see what the discrepancy is between that sheet and this sheet, but this is the one that we would be using for today, is the one that I used on the PowerPoint. Exactly. And then, so you do have a copy of that?
Yeah, I have both. I didn't know the difference between the two.
No, the one that I'm presenting here is the one that please use as we move forward. Any other questions?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead and bring your first.
Okay, so what we intend on doing is calling the speakers up according to the way that they were submitted to us. So the first speaker that we're going to call up is Billy Cowley from Central Arizona Shelter Services.
Good evening. Thank you very much for considering our application and for inviting us to come to present this evening. We really appreciate that. CAS has been in business for 28 years, and we're trying to go out of business, but the numbers continue to increase. We depend heavily on all the cities and towns to contribute to our programs because we are a regional solution. We do not just serve Phoenix residents. We serve residents from the entire Phoenix, Maricopa County area. I'm the Director of Family and Adult Services at CAS and all the different programs that we run. In addition to shelter, we have case management, employment, child care at the family shelter, employment, dental services. It runs the gamut. We have just about everything that someone would need to get back up on their feet and secure housing, which is our ultimate goal. We have not been funded by Surprise in the past, and that's a bit of a surprise to us because we do serve a lot of Surprise clients over the course of the year. To address the remarks, we enter all the data for clients that come to get services at our shelter into a system called the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS. And I just pulled off the data from July 1st of this year to December 31st. And we have served 26 Surprise clients in that period of time from the various different Surprise zip codes. Some of those were served at our family shelter. We have a family shelter in the Sunny Slope area that serves up to 36 families at one time. We're the second largest shelter to provide services for families and the largest shelter that provides services for single men and women. Our single shelter is located on the Human Services campus in downtown Phoenix, and we serve almost 7,000 people in the course of a year. We've done a cost analysis that was included in your packet, and it will show that a night of services, it costs approximately $21. So if you look at that and consider the fact that we're part of a regional solution, we do consider that this really gives you an opportunity to help take care of the citizens that do come to us from your area. I can give you one example of a young man that came to visit us. Our youth population is exploding. It's terrible. We're getting way more youth than ever before, but we had a young man that was 18 years old that showed up one night at the end of August, right before school started, and he was just a mess. And staff called me as I was still working late and said, you know, we need to do something for this young man. And I said, why is he so upset? And he said, because he can't get to school in the morning, or school tomorrow afternoon. And I said, well, what's that about? And apparently he was engaged in several after-school activities, including ROTC, and he had made his way to the downtown shelter after long family dysfunction from another state, came to live here with family members here. That didn't work out. Couch surfed for the summer and ended up homeless. And so he's at the shelter, and his request to us is, I need to get to that ROTC meeting tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock. So we do a lot of things. We don't usually chauffeur. We don't usually come to 30 miles each way to transport, but he was very sincere and very upset, and this really settled him down. We said, fine, we'll work that out for tomorrow. We can't do that every day, but we'll work it out for tomorrow. Long story short, he stayed with us for approximately 2-3 weeks, I believe, participated in all of the programs. Our outreach worker for youth took a special interest in him, as did the shelter staff and every staff that he worked with. We were able to place him into
30 seconds.
Into home base, which serves youth, and so he had a living situation there that was safe with a lot of support services around him. He was then extremely motivated young man. He got employment full-time downtown, stayed at home base until he could save up enough money for his rent, is extremely proud of the fact that he doesn't need to get food stamps. He's on his, continues to go to school. He's is scheduled to graduate. He's still out here in Dysart. He's scheduled to graduate at the end of at May, and he's enlisted in the Marines. So we feel really, really good about being able to provide for that young man, as well as the other 25 people that we've served so far this year. So based on this, we would anticipate we'll probably serve at least that many more between now and the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we'd like to invite Janine Gaskins to come up. She is representing the Summer Youth Employment Program.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Janine Gaskins, and I work in the City Manager's office. I am extremely honored to present the City of Surprises 2013 Summer Youth Employment Program. I handed out these little brochures that I whipped together just so that you could follow on, because I have a tendency to fall into my New York City speedy dialect. So I'm going to be sure to try to slow myself down, but if I speed up, you've got something to kind of look at. So the reason for my excitement and my passion for this program is because I had the pleasure of participating in programs like this Summer Youth Program last year in the City of Surprise, and in my previous job at Avondale and several other cities throughout the city of Arizona, as well as in New York City. I also stand before you as a recipient that received and benefited from programs similar to this back in New York City, and I attest to you that these types of programs is why I am where I am today. So what makes this program in the City of Surprise a step above the other programs that I've mentored in and been a part of is that the City of Surprises program was designed to provide meaningful work experience and relevant job experience to students. And for this particular program, they're asking for funding to support jobs for 15 students. But I'd like to just put a plug in there about some of the past programs that I've attended where we've had students that were chosen for the program just because they were low mod and they really weren't vested in it. I actually had kids that would, you know, just stay on the computer and look up how they can find the latest Reebok style. But the City of Surprises program was different, and I was so impressed with it because city staff took the time out to interview students that were vested and wanted to get something out of the program. Not only that, but they also made sure that they were pairing those students with staff that were invested and had an interest in similar things that the student was striving to be in the future. And that just to me was wonderful. And so I had like the best intern in the world. Additionally, the program that the City of Surprise has developed meets all of the HUD criteria, and I'd just like to call some of them out just for your, just to highlight. First of all, in order to be eligible for this program, the students must be full-time students within the City of Surprise. They also must be legal citizens. They also must be able to work and committed to work up to 25 hours a week, as well as be a participant for 9 to 11 weeks of the summer, and that gives that continuity and it ensures that they learn something. They also must have some reliable transportation because, as you know, it's very difficult to get around, so we want to make sure that they have those resources to get here. And they also need to be low to medium income. So why do I want you to fund this? Not only is this program a part of the City of Surprise's strategic plan, it's also part of the City of Surprise's 5-year consolidated HUD plan. So it meets all of the criteria and it can be tracked appropriately so that we can report that back to our funders, our federal funders, that is. I also want you to support this program and to support it through funding it because the local demand exceeds the market availability of jobs. Not only we know that in this economy, adults can't even find jobs. Can you imagine students? And back in my day, you could find a job. It was pretty much you can go and you assert yourself and you work at the mall and you do those sorts of things. But here in Surprise, that's not only difficult for adults right now, but it's also difficult for youth. And last year, they had approximately 100 applications and could only fund 19 of them through a Tohono O'odham tribal grant. Watch my time. The program also provides funding for vulnerable youth, and that means the most vulnerable, usually minorities and those that are low income. And these are the students, and I attest again, I was one of those kids that came from a less than lucrative environment in New York City, but these are the kids that are going to be working as opposed to doing drugs and other extracurricular activities that are not so appropriate for their age group. Also, the program has what I would like to call a program succession plan. And I say that because several of the students, including my intern, not only after they completed the program, they actually went on to do other leadership things within the City of Surprise, like the Teen Advisory Meeting. So our ask for today is for $47,144, which would provide $8 an hour for students, approximately 15 to 19 students for a summer program. And we understand that there's not a lot of money, so we're willing to take less. And I would like to leave you in my last 8 minutes to look at some of the statistics from the national, from a national organization to talk about the experiences and the benefit of providing these type of activities for students. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
I do have one. How many years has this been going on in the City of Surprise? I'm sorry.
The City of Surprise was granted one grant from the Tohono O'odham in 2011, and that program ran last year, and it was the first program of its type.
So last year was the first one,
Yes,
first
sir.
year they ran. All right, and are we tracking, will we be tracking, the percentage of students that actually go on to graduate high school and move on in their life? Is that something that, I know you have a succession plan based on that, so, to justify the expense, are we looking at how these young students are growing into their adult life, or does it stop there?
I can tell you this, based on the resources that we have, that longitudinal type of tracking may not be possible. But my intern, Ryan, here, I see him all the time. I was so excited to see him up at the dais on the team advisory. So we know this is a kid that I stay in touch with as a staff mentor. So some of our staff mentors develop those types of relationships and actually can report that. But in terms of the financial means that it would be to track down some of the students, that might not be possible.
How much was your grant last year?
In 2011, the City of Surprise was awarded $46,000 from the Tohono O'odham Nation for this similar program.
And did you have 19 participants last year?
Yes, we did.
Okay, thank you very much.
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
What kind of job skills or training are you providing the students?
Okay, so this program is so great because not only do the students get paired with a staff person that has some similar commonalities to what they want to be, but it also has 4 hours every Monday, every one of those 11 weeks. Those students get some job skills training. So they learn how to do resumes. They learn how to dress. They learn how to talk in interviews. And these days, kids just know how to text. So they learn all of these essential things that'll help them in the future. And this can be taught to their brothers and their sisters. And it's just a lifelong benefit for them.
Now, is this a program that, have you pursued any other funding, like from WestMec, organizations that do provide, like, for example, CTE education to different school districts?
The City of Surprise did apply for a grant from the Fort McDowell organization in 2012, but we were denied funds.
And does WestMec, that's something that just, having worked with WestMec in the past and being a
The city
CTE teacher.
The city does have partnerships with WestMec as well as the Dysart School District and even Natterburg, but we have not explored that funding source.
Okay.
In addition to their Monday training, what types of jobs do they do during the week for the 25 hours?
So during the 25 hours, each child is paired with the appropriate staff person, and I'll talk specifically about my intern. I actually had a surrogate as well. In the city manager's office, my student, he had an interest in being a dental hygienist, and he wanted to go through the route of military and an officer. So he would go to college, he'd go to school, and then become an officer. And so the things that he did at the time, I was the city's grants administrator. So the things that he did for me were all related to research, because in grants you have to research. So I would have him research things. Because he wanted to be a dentist, I would have him research grants that were related to dentistry. I would have him look all throughout the valley to find and accumulate all sorts of organizations, as you mentioned, that might be able to fund youth programs so that we could continue this. We had another young lady on our floor who was interested in hotel management. So we actually took her down to a Grant Professional Association conference, and she helped us design it. She helped us get the table settings. She helped us in a field that she wanted to do. So we give them that sort of experience. Now, I will admit there is some mundane filing and those sorts of things, but we try really, really hard to match a staff that's going to be enthusiastic, invested in the children and that child's desires.
No further questions.
You mentioned about bringing them in on Monday for 4 hours every day, or for every week, to go over resumes and how to perform interviews, those types of things. How many businesses or business owners or hiring managers outside the City of Surprise have you reached out to give them the real life of what is to be expected in the business community?
This grant that we are requesting today has approximately $1,500 set aside for a reputable job skill training organization like Goodwill to come in and do those job training skills of resume building, of dressing and interviewing, and those sorts of things. In terms of reaching out to other commercial entities, at this point, we only use staff because human resources has some caveats that we have to be careful with if we just shift students out to other organizations. However, it would be a great program to spearhead where we could ask separate entities and organizations, would you like to do something like this? And, here's what we did and how about you do it? But we do have to be careful with insurance and liability. And of course, we're dealing with young kids. We want to make sure that we keep them safe, as well as fingerprinting and who they're dealing with. And the city has an in-kind to our program because we already do that and we already vet our city staff.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next, we would like to invite Jane Bruzies from Benavia, please.
Thank you, Christina. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commission. My name is Jane Bruzies. I'm the Senior Director of Programs with Benavia. Benavia is a nonprofit organization based right here in Surprise, and we've been in Surprise since the late 1980s. Tina Wilson, our Vice President of Development, is handing you a packet. I've included our main brochure that gives an overview of all of our services, the current CDBG flyer that's in English on one side, Spanish on the other, that informs residents of the City of Surprise of the current funding that we have available for our home delivered meal program and adult day services. And I've also given you the flyer for the home delivered meal program and our Wurtzies Child Development Center. We are at our current location on Greasewood Street, directly behind the Windmill Inn and behind Rio Salado campus here in Surprise. We are housed in a 24,000 square foot facility that houses our Wurtzies Child Development Center, one of 6 adult day centers, our administrative offices, and our commercial kitchen and cafe. As part of this grant proposal or request, through the 3 programs that we do offer residents of the City of Surprise, we are providing child care services, health services, education programs, and nutrition/meals to those who come to our adult day program and our home delivered meal program. Our adult day centers are state licensed by the Department of Health Services as well as internationally accredited. So the quality of programming that goes on at the adult day programs is above the standards that are set by the state of Arizona. In the adult day center at our Surprise campus, one of the unique things about our child care and adult day program is that we do intergenerational programming. So we care for infants as young as 6 weeks of age to children in preschool up to 5 years of age. And each classroom in the Wobblers, toddlers, and preschools get to interface with the older adults at the adult day program each day, Monday through Friday, from about 10:45 to 11:15 or 11:20. One of the children's classrooms, they're given the option of going into the intergenerational room and engaging in activity with the older adults. So it's a great way to enhance the life of not only the child and helping them to understand the interactions with older adults, but it also enriches the lives of the older adults. At the adult day program, all the participants are giving a healthy snack in the morning. They're given a hot lunch at noontime. And we also offer restorative care therapy and person-centered care at the adult day program. Our home delivered meal program is to help improve the health, well-being, and nutritional status of elderly adults and disabled individuals in the City of Surprise. Our meal program uses volunteers to deliver the meals Monday through Friday between 11 a.m. and about 12:45 p.m. We also do offer a 7-meal-a-week plan, and with the CDBG funding that we currently have for persons who meet the CDBG financial qualifications and residency requirements, we can provide a nutritious hot meal to their home delivered by a volunteer for $4 per meal. We've just been very pleased with the fact that the city has allowed us to this year increase the subsidy a little bit to make it more feasible for low-income residents to afford the hot meal program. Our Wurtzies Child Development Center is licensed for 95 children. We currently have an enrollment of about 72 children, and we're hoping to increase that amount. Currently, we have 3 families who are able to bring their children to Wurtzies Adult Day Program that otherwise would not have that benefit. We've had as many as 5 families on the program. Currently, we are serving 3 City of Surprise residents with the home delivered meal program. We've had up to 5 individuals on that program as well. And at our adult day centers, just to make you aware, the county funding and state funding that has previously been available for adult day center participants has been drastically cut, and there are wait lists on the county and state programs. So the funding that we currently have from CDBG is allowing us to increase the number of people that are able to participate in the adult day programs as a result of the funding and the fact that they're in the City of Surprise. We are concerned about the funding that we currently have. $12,833 is going very quickly for the people currently on service. So we are coming to you to seek more funding in order to hopefully increase serving more individuals, but also to keep those currently on service in the programs that they're benefiting from. Thank you very much for your consideration. Any questions?
Commissioners?
I have some questions.
Okay.
Last year you were saying you were funded last year from the City of Surprise?
The first year we were given $20,000.
What year was that?
2010, 2011, I think. Yeah, the funding years kind of get all mixed up. And I noticed on the remarks it indicated there were past performance issues. And what happened was it was new funding for us and just getting the word out that we had those monies available. The home delivered meal subsidy that year was very low. And so it made it very difficult even for people to be able to afford the meal because we're normally a private pay meal program. And so for that reason, this year when the $12,833 became available, we sought a higher subsidy amount, which makes it more feasible for people to afford the meal.
So your funding for 2012 was how much?
$12,833. And we've just requested that money get moved from the home delivered meal and the Word Sees Child Development in order to help cover the adult day center participants. Because the funding at the county and the state levels was cut, we're actually serving more people through the adult day center programming, which actually benefits the participant and the caregiver. But we're seeing an increase in the number of people at the day centers because of the county and state funding not being available, and the wait lists are long. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Next, we'd like to invite Rick Friesia from St. Mary's Food Bank.
Good evening. I recognize a lot of faces from previous years. I'm the CFO at St. Mary's Food Bank. I've been there about 5 years. And before that, this is my retirement job. Before that, I was a publicly traded company CFO for about 15 years. And one of the interesting things is this organization is the most efficient organization I have ever worked for. If I think of the planning committee and think of the things that I would be going through my mind is, what is the stewardship of the funds we're entrusting to these organizations? And with St. Mary's, it's impeccable. We've been in business about 50 years. It was mentioned that 15% of the funds for CDBG are used for administration. In our particular case, 95% of our funds go to the mission, and 5% is used for administration. Charity Navigator, which is the premier charitable rating organization, rates St. Mary's. Every year they've been rated, St. Mary's has been rated 4 stars, which puts us in the top 1% of all U.S. charities. In November, Forbes magazine rated us in the top 100 U.S. charities, which was one of the few charities that was a regional charity. Most of them were the national charities. So that's what we would do with the money. That's the stewardship we would bring to it. The funding is, as in past years, for emergency food boxes. An emergency food box is a box that's worth about $80 worth of food. Very little of it is donated food from food rescue sources. Most of it is factory fresh food coming from manufacturers. Because we've been in business for about 50 years, we have the ability to draw from the corporate community. Today, we had about 30 members of the community from Surprise come down for a tour. And I enjoy giving the tours because we get to show off our organization, and quite frankly, it's a donor opportunity as well. And many times during the 2-hour tour, people said, this doesn't look like a food drive kind of place. This looks like a Costco warehouse inside. Everything is factory fresh, palletized food, and the monies that we're looking for are not for food at all. It's $8.45 a box. And it is for the logistics of getting the food from areas, forklifting it, trucking it around and the like, assembling it. And in the Surprise case, we are distributing about $120,000 worth of logistics, about 5 to 10 times that value in food. Someone mentioned that they would be willing to take less. We've already accounted for that. We're asking for about 1/5 of the cost of distributing food boxes in Surprise. So it's about $120,000 of logistics. We're looking for about $25,000. So leaving plenty of time on the table. Questions?
Questions, commissioners? I've actually been there, so I think it's great. So thank you.
Thank you.
I've been by and seen it. I've been by, so it's quite an amazing operation.
As our last presenter, I'd like to invite Stephanie Olson from Arizona Charter Academy.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Olson, and I'm the principal of Arizona Charter Academy located in the OTS. I'm here tonight to request funding of the Give It Your All Athletic Leadership and Literacy Program. The grant we are proposing is built off the successful grant done in collaboration with the City of Surprise called the Get on the Ball Grant. Basketball Achieves Literacy and Life Skills. This grant successfully engaged 275 plus youth in basketball camps that promoted both athletics and the love of reading. This year, it is our desire to expand this program to include high-interest sports such as volleyball and football, as well as adding a leadership component. Our Give It Your All grant, the All standing for Athletics, Leadership, and Literacy, will reach out to over 290 youth in grades 4 through 12 with the purpose of increasing athletic skills, reading comprehension, leadership development, and character awareness. This program assists those students living in the original town site who are provably most at risk. The OTS has the highest crime rate in the city and often increases when school is out on breaks in summer. Currently, no city programs providing these unique experiences are available in this area, so the sports camps would not compete with existing city programs. Additionally, OTS has been identified as an area of focus for both the consolidated plan and the general plan, as 51% of residents living there are of low to moderate income. Giving It Your All will be held during school breaks in summer to provide a positive atmosphere where youth can have fun, exercise, learn important leadership skills, all while improving their reading. As you know, reading is the foundation for academic success, and Give It Your All uses sports and free lunch provided through the National Lunch School Program as a hook to get school students into the program, and then slips in engaging academics. The time frame also addresses the issue of academic regression, which students often experience when not actively engaged in academic study for elongated periods of time. With funding of just $11 a day per student, youth can participate in increased skill building for athletics, receive reading instruction, and be taught leadership skills by qualified staff. All of our coaches are NFHS certified and highly qualified in education. As the overseers of the program, we are committed to excellence in customer service to both youth and parents, quality programming, and fiscal responsibility. We are excited and hopeful to continue this amazing program for the youth in the original town site, and thank you for the opportunity. Is there any questions?
I have one. Is your charter school, is that in Old?
Yes, it is.
And do they pay to go to the charter school? Do your students, how does that work with your?
No, actually charters are technically public schools, so there is no tuition involved for students.
And this would still only benefit lower income children,
Correct.
Is that correct? And that's boys and girls?
Yes, boys and girls, a variety of sports, and it's not just our students at our school. We have a lot of participants. We are 79% free and reduced. Most of our students live in the OTS, but we have kids coming from all over Surprise to our programming.
So since it's not only students, how is academics incorporated into it?
It's a great question. We do a really cool reading program called Reading Circles based on Socratic Seminar. We focus on informational text, which is really the most important bang for your buck right now. We use really high interest materials. We get a lot of scholastic magazines for sports for the upper grades. We do things like, this past year we did The Diary of a Basketball Junkie. It's the story of Jimmy Herron, who was a basketball player's rise to fame, got on heroin. Just an amazing story, autobiography for students to read. So we do that. There's a time out during the day where we read and we discuss in a Socratic seminar style.
Okay, so there is actual classroom hours where they have to devote, otherwise they don't get to participate in the athletic part of it?
We build it right dead smack in the middle of the programming.
Any kind of testing or
Yes,
any
we
other
do
way
a
to hold
pre
them
and a
accountable?
post test when kids come in using Ames Web, which assesses reading fluency and comprehension.
Thank you.
This is your only source of funding for this program then?
Yes, currently.
Commissioners, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that does in fact conclude the presentations. I don't know if at this point the commission had any more questions having to do with the CDBG process itself.
Well, I do, as far as we obviously cannot fund everybody the amount that they're asking for. So how does this work when we recommend it? I mean, because I could see the possibility that we have 7 different commissioners who have 7 different notions of how to allocate this money. I don't know how that's going to work when we go through this process. I can envision it taking hours. So can you recommend any streamlined method that we can use when we have to decide what we're going to do here?
I know in the past the commission has decided on doing it a few different ways. One, they take recommendations from staff and tweak it from there. Second, they have everybody give their first, second, and third choice, and then from their score according to how many points for being first, second, and third, and then go through a negotiation of doing that. So it would be up to the commission to decide which way to do it. I'm fairly certain, and any of the speakers can correct me if I'm wrong, that there would be a little bit of negotiation as to how much they'd be willing to receive in assistance, because the way that I saw the applications put together, it's kind of a units of service situation. So you would get so many students, or you would give so many meals, that sort of thing. So there might be some negotiation there. From a staff standpoint, we do not recommend the funding of more than, say, 3 grant applications because of the administration that comes with it. It does come with auditing on our behalf and looking at applications, assuring that everybody was eligible, that sort of thing. But we will definitely take whatever recommendation the commission gives.
I have one question. How much did the city have in grant money last year? Was it a similar amount?
It was a very similar amount, yes.
66 something?
Exactly.
Okay.
I guess what I'd like to see from you at the next time when we make this recommendation is, if we don't give the grant, what is the impact to that program?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, does that mean there is no program, or is it 5% of their program type of thing? Because
so I guess at this point, it would be my recommendation to the speakers to provide something in the form of email talking about the impact to their program that would then be forwarded to the commission for review as part of the packet.
Could you send out to us how the city allocated and who they allocated the grant money to last year? Is it in the package?
It is. I don't believe it's in the packet right now.
I didn't see it.
But we can certainly give that to you.
Okay, I'd like to see that.
Who the funding history has been
Have some
to.
new requests for funding, and we want to see who got it last year versus
Certainly.
new requests.
Is this something possibly that, I don't know, maybe we meet 30 minutes prior to go over something like this? Since we're allocating funds based on possibly percentages?
Open meetings.
So we just come up here and fight for it?
Commissioner Horler, I think because it is a public meeting, the discussion needs to happen up here on the dais, so that everybody has the ability to hear what everybody's comments are.
All right, I'm good with that.
The only thing I would urge with that is to please make sure that the commission has all the information to make that decision on that night from all of the applicants and from the city and the staff, and give us enough time to actually be able to research this. Okay. So if we're going to vote on it on March 7th, we would expect to have everything to us long before that time so that we can make our decisions at that time. I think that'll help.
Certainly.
To do that. This is an open meeting. Anyone wishing from the public to speak that has not Seeing none, I close it. I ask for, this has no voting tonight, is that correct, Sharon?
That is correct. It was just for discussion.
So, Commissioners, any other questions before I close this meeting? Seeing none? Meeting's closed.
The surprise dial-a-ride service provider is Valley Metro, who'll operate through Discount Cab under the name Northwest Valley Dial-a-Ride. Loop 303 widening work is underway in Surprise.